Hi everyone. Today we will present on the topic Impact of Oil Palm Plantations on the Ecosystem for the course JSM 6012 Ecological System, Concept and Issue. In this presentation, we will explain how oil palm plantations function as an artificial ecosystem, discuss their impacts on the environment, and explore how more sustainable practices and digital tools can help reduce these impacts. I hope that by the end of this presentation, we can see both the benefits and the ecological costs of oil palm and think about how to balance development with environmental protection.
From African tree to global commodity. The oil palm, Elaeus guineensis, is originally a tree of West and Central Africa. For generations, communities there used its red fruit oil for cooking, lighting, and traditional medicine. During the colonial period, oil palm was introduced to Southeast Asia. The humid, equatorial climate of Malaysia and Indonesia turned out to be ideal. The trees grew vigorously, and their fruit bunches were heavy with oil. Over time, industrial-scale plantations were established. Compared to other oil crops like soy, sunflower, or rapeseed, oil palm yields far more oil per hectare. This high productivity made it attractive to governments, investors, and companies seeking a reliable source of vegetable oil. Today, palm oil is the most widely traded vegetable oil in the world. It feeds global supply chains that stretch from Asia to Europe, from the Middle East to Africa and the Americas. But to produce that oil, vast areas of land have been transformed into plantations, particularly in Indonesia and Malaysia. And that transformation has profound ecological consequences. Oil palm in Malaysia and Sarawak. In Malaysia, oil palm is not just another crop. It is one of the pillars of the national economy. Plantations in peninsular Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak contribute significantly to export earnings, government revenue and rural development. They support large corporations, smallholder farmers, drivers, mill workers, mechanics and traders. In Sarawak, oil palm landscapes stretch across coastal plains, river valleys and inland areas. Some estates are owned by major companies. Others are managed by local smallholders and communities who have turned parts of their land into plantations. For many rural households, oil palm offers regular cash income. It can finance school fees, house improvements, and access to healthcare. Because of this, oil palm is often associated with progress and opportunity. But expansion of plantations has also replaced other land uses. Natural forests used for hunting and gathering, peat swamps that store vast amounts of carbon, traditional farming systems, and other crops. To understand how this affects ecosystems, we need to think of an oil palm plantation not just as farmland, but as a designed, artificial ecosystem. The plantation as an artificial ecosystem. Imagine looking down on a tropical rainforest from above. You would see a dense, multi-layered structure, towering emergent trees, a thick canopy, understory shrubs, climbing lianas, and a shaded forest floor covered with leaf litter and decaying wood. Thousands of species interact within this complex web. Plants, animals, fungi, insects, and microscopic organisms. Now imagine looking down on a typical oil palm plantation. You see rows of oil palms planted at regular spacing, often all of similar age and height. The undergrowth is patchy, some grasses, ferns, or cover crops. Access roads and drainage canals form a geometric pattern across the land. Ecologically, this is an artificial ecosystem. It has low biodiversity with one dominant plant species, the oil palm. High human control, where fertilizers, herbicides and pesticides are applied to maintain yields. continuous external inputs, such as fuel for machinery and energy for processing. Outputs in the form of fresh fruit bunches and biomass that are removed from the system. In a natural forest, energy and nutrients circulate through complex cycles. In a plantation, those cycles are simplified and heavily influenced by human management. This simplification makes oil palm productive, but it also lies at the heart of many ecological impacts we will see in the next segments. Birth of a plantation, land conversion. Every plantation begins with a major change in land use. In many regions, the starting point is natural forest. Trees are cut, undergrowth is cleared, and large machines move in to open the land. Sometimes, remaining vegetation is burned to speed up the clearing process. On peatlands, the change is even more dramatic. Drainage canals are dug to lower the water table because oil palm cannot grow in waterlogged conditions. Peat that has been saturated for centuries is suddenly exposed to air. On hilly ground, terraces and roads are carved into the slopes. Soil is pushed into new shapes and compacted by heavy machinery. By the time young oil palms are planted, the original ecosystem has already been fundamentally transformed. Forest animals have lost their habitat. The soil and hydrology have been disturbed. A pulse of carbon has been released into the atmosphere through decomposing biomass, and in some cases, fires. From an ecological point of view, this moment of conversion from forest or peatland to plantation is one of the most damaging phases in the oil palm life cycle. Biodiversity, from rich forest to simplified plantation. Tropical rainforests are among the richest ecosystems on Earth. In a single hectare, there may be hundreds of tree species and countless insects, birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Many species have evolved to fill very specific niches. Some depend on particular tree species, others on the dark understory, tree hollows, or fallen logs. When forests are cleared and replaced with oil palm, most of that richness disappears. In the plantation, plant diversity is sharply reduced. The canopy is uniform, dominated almost entirely by oil palm crowns. There is less variety of food sources, fewer nesting sites, fewer places to hide or breed. Forest-dependent birds that need tall, diverse trees struggle to survive. Large mammals that require extensive habitat, such as some primates and carnivores, may disappear from the area. Many specialized insects, amphibians, and reptiles lose the microhabitats they rely on. Some generalist species do adapt. Certain birds forage among the palms and along edges. Rodents and some small mammals find niches in weedy patches and near human settlements. A few insect species may even become pests. But the overall pattern is clear. The plantation supports fewer species, and the community becomes dominated by a smaller number of tolerant, widespread organisms. Sensitive, rare, and endemic species decline. Where forest patches, riparian buffers, or protected areas remain, they play a critical role as refuges. However, if they are too small or isolated, the wildlife they support may eventually vanish due to limited space and genetic isolation. Thus, the expansion of oil palm often leads to a simplified landscape with reduced biodiversity and fragmented habitats. Soil and erosion, the ground beneath our feet. Soil may seem lifeless, but it is actually a living, breathing part of the ecosystem. Healthy soil contains organic matter, air spaces, water, and a multitude of organisms, from earthworms and insects down to fungi and bacteria. It supports plant growth, filters water, and stores carbon. When land is cleared for oil palm, the protective cover of vegetation and leaf litter is removed. The soil surface becomes exposed to intense tropical rainfall. Raindrops hit the bare soil, breaking apart aggregates and making fine particles easier to wash away. On slopes, plantation roads and terraces can act as channels that guide water downhill. If drains and outlets are not carefully designed and maintained, runoff becomes concentrated, carving rills and gullies into the soil. Over time, this can remove fertile topsoil, reduce soil depth and productivity, increase sediment delivery to streams and rivers downstream. Within the plantation, repeated traffic by tractors and trucks compacts the soil, squeezing out air spaces and reducing infiltration. Compaction makes it harder for roots to grow and for rainwater to soak into the ground. If organic matter inputs are low and much of the biomass is removed, soil structure can deteriorate further. With less organic matter, soil holds less water and becomes more vulnerable to erosion. Sediment washed from plantations often carries nutrients and traces of agrochemicals with it. When this sediment enters rivers, it increases turbidity and can smother the habitats of fish and invertebrates. Soil degradation is not always as visible as deforestation, but its consequences for ecosystem health, water quality, and long-term productivity are serious and far-reaching.
Water, rivers, floods, and quality. Water connects the plantation to the wider landscape. In many oil palm areas, networks of drains, ditches, and canals are used to control water levels. On peat, canals keep the water table low enough for palms to grow. On mineral soils, drains remove excess water from fields to allow machinery to operate and roots to breathe. However, altering hydrology comes with trade-offs. When vegetation cover is simplified and soils are compacted, less rainwater soaks into the ground. More water flows rapidly over the surface. During heavy storms, this can lead to sharp rises in river levels, contributing to flash floods downstream. During dry seasons, soils that have lost organic matter may store less water. Streams fed by degraded catchments can experience lower base flows, affecting aquatic life and water availability for people. Water quality is another key issue. Fertilizers applied in plantations provide nutrients for palms, but if they are overused or applied at the wrong time, rain can wash them into streams and rivers. Herbicides and pesticides can also be carried by runoff. The result may include nutrient enrichment and algal blooms, toxic effects on aquatic organisms, changes in the composition of stream communities. Sediment from erosion further degrades water quality, making water muddy and limiting the penetration of sunlight needed by aquatic plants. For communities who rely on rivers for drinking, bathing, fishing, and irrigation, these changes are very real. They affect health, livelihoods, and cultural practices. Good management, such as wide, vegetated riparian buffers, erosion control, and careful chemical use, can reduce these impacts. But where such practices are weak, rivers and communities carry the burden.
Climate and peat, carbon, fire, and haze. The effects of oil palm are not limited to local ecosystems. They are also closely linked to global climate change. Forests store large amounts of carbon in their trees and soils. When forests are cut and burned, much of that carbon is released as carbon dioxide. On peatlands, carbon storage is even greater. Peat is formed from partially decomposed plant material that has accumulated over thousands of years in waterlogged conditions. In some places, peat layers are several meters thick. To grow oil palm on peat, water levels must be lowered. Drainage exposes peat to oxygen, and it starts to oxidize. This process releases carbon dioxide continuously over many years.